I recently stayed at a hotel with my parents for an extended weekend over the holidays. We were at one of those really old hotels that used to be super fancy when it was built 100 years ago. It was one of the biggest I'd ever seen, and it was the only place with any vacancy over the holidays when my parents booked the trip. I don't even know why they forced themselves into it. My mom and dad never got along, so they were only doing it so we could pretend like we were some happy, normal family for the holidays. They really didn't plan anything out either, because there was literally nothing for us to do while we were there. The hotel had a really eerie vibe to it. It reminded me of the lodge from The Shining, and once that popped into my head, I couldn't stop seeing the similarities. There were no security cameras in the entire building as far as I could see, and not to mention, there were so few guests in all those big empty hallways and lobbies that it felt like we were completely alone there. And of course, we got snowed in on the first night by a huge storm, so there was no chance of us going out to do anything. The whole time we were there, we did everything to avoid each other. My mom essentially never left the hotel room. She'd clean things even though we had housekeeping and lied in bed all day watching TV on the crappy satellite channels until she passed out at 3 a.m. My dad, on the other hand, was always busy working no matter where he was. He was some kind of old-timey mystery novelist, and would get mad and yell at us if we got in the way of him working.
Get out of here! Can't you see I'm busy working? Go back to the room now!
He set himself up in the center of the biggest lobby and just typed his life away on that stupid typewriter all day long. Then he'd pass out on one of the couches in the lobby. I stayed in the room with my mom for the majority of my stay, bored out of my mind. By the time my mom let the 10th rerun of Titanic play on the TV, I got up and left to do something, even if it was just wandering around. I did a lot of wandering around, actually, but only for the first couple days. After a while, I learned it's not a good idea to be alone in the hallways of that hotel at night. On the third night, I couldn't sleep after my mom went down, so I left the room and tried to find something to look at. It was the middle of the night, and everything was dead quiet. I must have walked a mile through the hallways and not seen or heard a single soul. I started to get lost in my thoughts. Then I rounded a corner and saw him. There was a man at the far end of the hallway, staring at me. He was wearing a Santa Claus costume, except he lacked the big red coat and boots and was just wearing underwear. He stood on all fours like some sort of animal with his back hunched over. I froze and stared back at him. Then he waved at me, calling me over to him.
Hey, come here.
What do you want?
It's not about what I want. It's about what you want. It's Christmas, isn't it? You want presents, don't you?
No, I think I'm good.
Nonsense, you deserve it. Come on, come here. Don't be shy. I'm Santa Claus. You can trust me.
I knew it was a bad idea, but I inched closer. This was the most interesting thing that had happened so far. It was sheer boredom and curiosity that pushed me forward. I walked slowly and cautiously down the hallway, keeping my eyes on him the whole time. But when I got halfway there, all of a sudden, he darted around the corner and disappeared. When I got to the corner, I saw him partway down the hall, peeking out the doorway of one of the hotel rooms, waving at me to come closer again. I was legitimately horrified by the way he looked, but the fact that he actually appeared to be staying in one of the rooms eased my mind a bit. I thought maybe he did have a bunch of presents in his hotel room, so I walked over to his door. By the time I got there, he was standing behind the door, prodding me to come inside. All I remember seeing was the lights turned off in the room. It was pitch black and I could just barely see the man's face. That's when he said,
Come inside, little one. I have all my presents right in here.
Is it okay if you give them to me out here? As soon as I said that, the smile on his face vanished. That's when the most terrifying thing happened. He lunged forward and grabbed me by the wrist, trying to pull me in. I pulled back against him and called out for help.
Help! Someone! Get this guy off of me! Help! Get inside, you spoiled little brat! Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops! Somebody please help me! Shut up and get your presents! There's no cops in this hotel, you idiot!
He almost managed to drag me into the room, but at the last second, I managed to break free. I wasted no time running away at full sprint and raced back to my room. I slammed the door shut behind me, throwing the deadbolt and latching the chain. I then dragged a rug out of the bathroom and shoved it underneath the crack of the door. That way there would be no way on earth anybody could get in. I was so shaken up and paranoid that I checked under all the beds and looked behind the shower curtain. But it was just me and my mom alone in the hotel room. I had nobody to talk to and was forced to internalize the whole ordeal, as my mom was also passed out so severely that she didn't even budge when I made all that noise coming in. For the rest of the weekend, I never once left the hotel room for anything, not even to eat. I convinced my mom to order room service for the remainder of the trip, For some reason, I was too scared to even talk about it while we were still there. I had planned on telling her everything when we got home, but I saw something while we were checking out that kept me from ever even thinking about that while my father was still alive. I was disassociating behind the two of them while they were arguing in front of the clerk at the checkout counter, when I happened to notice something in my father's briefcase which he'd set on the floor beside him. It was overstuffed and wasn't closed completely, and there was the telltale red and white fluff of a Santa Claus costume sticking out of it, along with a half sheet of paper from the manuscript he'd been working on all weekend. There was only one line on it, repeated across the entire pages, that read, "My son is on the naughty list and will pay for it this Christmas." I remember this one tobogganing park in my old area that me and a couple neighborhood friends used to play at. It was Christmas break, and nothing mattered except who won the snowball fight, who made the best snow angel, and who could reach the top speed on their toboggan. It was a blast, and I was having fun, but I wasn't able to appreciate it as much as I could have. One of the neighborhood kids that we didn't really vibe with as much had come out with us that day. I wanted it to just be me and my best friend. We functioned best as a duo, and this weak third link was getting in the way of things. Not that we hated him, he just kinda sucked at everything. When I raced him down the hill, my friend stayed at the top to track who was the fastest. I was, of course. The neighborhood kid was slow in more ways than one. I got to the bottom a full 10 seconds before he did. It was during that brief moment that I spent alone at the bottom of the hill that I saw something really strange. Something that in the moment, I didn't know would spell the end of all the good times. Way in the distance, through a light thicket of trees, I saw a face that didn't belong on the body it was attached to. It was unmistakably the face of Winnie the Pooh. It had the classic golden color of honey and the black beady eyes. But the man I saw with that face was almost inhuman looking. Not to say that he looked like a Pooh Bear exactly. He was haggard and filthy and all around just a bone-chilling sight. And of course, the moment I saw him, he saw me too, and he didn't look away. We stared at each other from across the distance for what felt like eternity.
Hey, what are you looking at?
What? Oh, that guy right there. Do you see him? I think he painted his face to look like Winnie the Pooh. Funny, isn't it?
No, man, that's not funny. You gotta stay away from those people.
What are you talking about, dude?
I've heard stories about creeps who dress up like that. They're bad news. Come on, stop looking at him and let's go up the hill before you attract him over here.
Okay. I guess that kid had more brains than I gave him credit for. But at the time, I had a burning curiosity about what I'd just seen, and it was overriding all common sense. Of course, I didn't mention it again around the neighborhood kid. I noticed he always looked at me funny after that. Instead, I waited for him to leave me and my friend alone for a second. Then I set up a meeting. Hey man, you bored? Yeah, been feeling weird today. Don't know why. I bet it's because of that stupid third wheel kid. What do you say we come back here around 10 tonight? Have some more fun without him dragging us down. Sure, man. I got you. Low-key? Definitely low-key. I didn't tell him why I really wanted to come back. I was worried he'd say no, so I just played it off that I wanted to toboggan more. Neither of us had cell phones at the time, but I did, however, carry a flashlight in my pocket. I went early and waited for him on my toboggan at the top of the hill. When he showed up, we rode down one more time, but before he started going back up, I stopped him. Hold on a second. I want to show you something. Show me what? You'll see. Just leave those here. We'll come back for them later. We won't be long. I led us through the sparse bit of woods and over a small hill. I remembered exactly where I'd seen that creepy Winnie the Pooh wannabe standing. When we got there, it started to snow again, and my friend wanted to turn back. What are you trying to show me, man? I don't see anything. Just a little bit farther. Come on, man, don't wuss out. I saw a well nearby, nestled a little deeper into the woods. It was dark and creepy. It probably hadn't seen any use since colonial times, and at this point it was barely more than a cobblestone ring. The moonlight was shining directly down into it, and I thought I could see the bottom, so I threw down a snowball. That's gotta be about 10 feet. Let's climb into it.
Let's what? Are you crazy?
I didn't bother arguing with him. I knew that if I went, he would follow me just because he didn't want to be alone out there. You're gonna get me into so much trouble, man. Wait for me. See? 10 feet.
Holy crap, look at that tunnel though.
For whatever reason, there was a long horizontal section under the well before it went down any further. After about 100 feet, we came across a sharp turn. It was tall enough for us to walk through. We slowed up, peeked our heads around the corner, and there they were in the opening. Dozens of them, men, women, and children. each and every one of them with a sloppy tattoo of Winnie the Pooh plastered across their faces. They were tangled up with each other and muttering some sort of chant. We were both in shock, but my friend couldn't keep it together.
Blood and honey, blood and honey, blood and honey.
He retched, alerting the entire tribe to our presence. All at once, they stared us down with these soulless animal eyes. The second I saw one of them step towards us, I split. Run! I ran as fast as I could looking for an exit, just hoping that my friend was running behind me. I sprinted all the way back and scrambled out of the well. I fell into the snow topside and waited for my friend to come out, but he never did. I waited for several minutes and called his name 100 times, but there was no response. I knew before long that one of those freaks had gotten him. That's the moment when everything became blurry. I realized I was completely alone out there with nobody to help me, but also nobody to know what went down. Shaking and sick to my stomach, I stumbled back to our toboggans, which were already halfway covered in the snowfall. I finished the job of burying his toboggan and took mine home, where I pretended like nothing had ever happened. I felt like I'd gone crazy. I never told anyone what happened since. I was too scared of going to jail. My best friend has been a missing person for so many years now. I've tried to go back to that park to make myself feel normal, but it's ruined now. Every time I go in the winter, I swear I see my friend's face staring at me from the trees, always painted like Winnie the Pooh, just like them.
This story happened during the Christmas holidays. I'm a father, a husband, and a breadwinner, which entailed me to work overtime more often than not. Of course, it was infuriating, as I wanted to be home with my family rather than trapped in a cubicle for hours on end. I had been trying to persuade my boss to offer me a home-based job. I'd always get on his good side, hoping to enlighten him regarding the benefits of working remotely. However, no matter what I did, he kept rejecting my pitch, looking for ways to bombard me with overtime work. There was never enough time for me to get a decent rest until vacation finally arrived. However, with only 3 days off, namely Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day, it still felt like I needed more time to rejuvenate. So, in the end, it still wasn't much of a vacation for me. When I'd see my boss and all the others from the upper management leave the office early while the lower echelon were given additional tasks, I'd bite my lower lip in frustration. But every night when I'd arrive home, I'd always find my wife sleeping soundly, exhausted from all the work, house cleaning, and cooking, in addition to taking care of our son. On weekends, whenever I had the chance to check up on my son in his bedroom, I'd usually find him drawing and eating a variety of chocolates. When I asked my son where he had gotten them, he would reply with,
"Willy Wonka gave them to me."
"Willy Wonka? Are you talking about Mr. Francis?" I replied, assuming it was one of his male teachers. He would then reply with,
"Nope, I said Willy Wonka, not Mr. Francis, Dad."
Without a tinge of reluctance, I scolded him, telling him the chocolates were bad for him. As a result, he ran to his mother to complain about how I was being a horrible parent. Through the years, my son and I had grown estranged since I was barely home. I would arrive home to watch my son draw while munching on these alleged Willy Wonka chocolates, which irked me every so often. Whenever I tried to speak to my wife about it, she would always brush it off like it wasn't a big deal. I remember even calling the school just to complain about it, but every time I'd call, they'd respond the same way, denying the school's engagement and handing out chocolates irresponsibly. Moreover, they'd claim to have no association with Willy Wonka's products. So one day I waited for my boss to head out of the office so I could sneak out of work, and when the coast was clear, I drove to my son's school, concealing myself amongst the trees near the playground, wearing a trench coat with binoculars in hand. I just had to know where the hell my son was getting these chocolates from. When he eventually left the school, I noticed him walking towards a different direction instead of the way home. This immediately prompted me to follow him. Moments later, I saw him enter an abandoned building by the corner of the street. I let about a minute go by before I followed him in there and snuck inside. That's when I noticed standing before me was a chocolate factory towering over me like an edifice that came straight out of a novel. And the more I gazed, gazed into the mammoth structure, the more I realized it resembled the one I saw in Willy Wonka's movie, with ramps and lines everywhere. I must be going nuts, I told myself. But despite my doubts, I went deep into the rabbit hole. There were oddly shaped machines and contraptions left and right. Moments later, I saw my son speaking to a man dressed up as Willy Wonka from a distance. He literally looked like the character in the film, as he wore the same giant top hat and sleek velvet coat. I couldn't help but wonder what this man's true identity was, and what's his purpose for meeting my son. It would soon become evident as I listened intently to their conversation.
So, my dear boy, you finally made it here. School's such a drag, isn't it? Kinda. This can all be yours if you want, but you must leave school so you can live here full time and have all the chocolates you want. Well, that sounds like fun, but no buts! The only but that matters here is what's in those boy.
What the hell is he doing? For reasons I couldn't understand, something was off. Like he was trying to take my son, luring him in with these chocolates.
Anyway, here are the chocolates you asked for. Take them home and come back the next day for more. But before I let you go, I have a I want you to try.
I tackled the creep to the ground and restrained him as I yelled at my son, saying,
"Don't just stand there, you idiot! Call the cops, now!"
Out of fear, he did what I instructed him to do, and soon the police arrived, arresting Willy Wonka. Moments later, as I spoke to the investigators, I discovered that the man behind the disguise wasn't a stranger. He was my boss. It became clear why my boss left early for work all this time. He left me in the office to do all the work, just so he could lavish in his obsession for sweets and give them to my son. But what makes this story all the more disturbing was how my son's drawings that he had been invested in all this time was just drawings of Willy Wonka. All this time knowing that this was happening behind my back makes me sick every time I see chocolate anywhere I go.